The Black Spire Academy rose from the moon's crust like a weapon-driven blade first into stone, its jagged towers silhouetted against a dim red star. Every species in the coalition knew its reputation. This was where warlords sent their best and empires buried their failures. 99% of cadets did not graduate. Most did not last a full cycle. The academy did not apologize for this. It advertised it. Instructor Crothmore watched the incoming transport with open disdain. His kind, Space Orcs bred for conquest and endurance, had built the academy to strip weakness from warriors. The trials were not fair, not safe, and never merciful. Fairness was a myth invented by species that had not yet been tested properly. Survival was the only metric that mattered. The transport doors opened, releasing a line of cadets onto the basalt platform. They were large, armored, scaled, plated, horned, each one the apex of a species. Crothmore's tusks flexed in satisfaction. These were proper candidates. These were creatures forged for violence. Then the human stepped out. He was smaller than every other cadet on the platform. No natural armor. No claws. No fangs. His bones were hidden beneath soft tissue, his skin thin and unprotected. He carried himself upright, unhurried, his dark eyes moving constantly as he took in the environment. He wore standard-issue academy gear without modification, as if he had not yet learned how inadequate it was. Crothmore snorted. "That is the human?" "Yes, instructor," replied Adjunct Velk, consulting a datapad. "Cadet Elias Ward."
Male.
"Terran. Voluntary exchange program." "A waste of my time," Crothmore growled. "Humans do not belong here." Velk hesitated. The coalition insisted. Crothmore's gaze returned to the human. Ward did not stare at the instructors, did not puff himself up or attempt to assert dominance, as the others did. Instead, he listened. He watched the way the wind moved between the towers, the rhythm of patrol drones, the spacing of kill slits along the walls. His posture was relaxed, but not careless. That bothered Crothmore more than fear would have. The cadets were marched into the intake hall, a cavernous chamber scarred by decades of combat demonstrations. Names were called. Species were announced. Kill counts and battlefield honors followed. Each cadet roared or slammed weapons in ritual affirmation. When Ward's name echoed through the hall, there was silence. "Species," Crothmore demanded. "Human," Ward answered evenly. A ripple of amusement passed through the chamber. One of the larger cadets laughed openly, a deep booming sound. Crothmore allowed it. "Let them laugh now. It made the breaking cleaner later." "The rules are simple," Crothmore said, his voice amplified until it vibrated bone. "You will be tested. You will be pushed beyond what you believe possible. Failure is expected. Injury is likely. Death is acceptable. Those who cannot adapt will be removed." Ward met the instructor's gaze without defiance, without submission. "Just attention. Statistics are posted," Crothmore continued. 99% of you will fail. Those odds are generous." Several cadets stiffened. Ward did not. Crothmore leaned forward, tusks glinting. "Human. Step forward." Ward complied immediately. "You are unarmed, unarmored, and unremarkable," Crothmore said. "Explain why you are here." Ward considered the question for a fraction of a second. "To learn how you break soldiers," he said. "So I can avoid breaking." The hall fell quiet. That answer was not in the expected range of responses. Crothmore's irritation sharpened. "You believe yourself clever." "No, instructor," Ward replied. "I believe your methods are effective." Velk glanced up from his datapad, surprised. Crothmore straightened slowly. "And you believe you will survive them?" Ward shrugged, a small, economical movement. "I believe survival is a process, not a trait." There it was again, that subtle wrongness. No bravado. No challenge. Just an assumption that effort mattered more than strength. Crothmore waved him back into line. "You will begin with the first evaluation trial at next cycle." Murmurs rippled through the cadets. The first trial was infamous. Designed to overwhelm instinct and punish hesitation, It was where most candidates washed out. Some begged to be removed. Others had to be dragged. Ward simply nodded. As the cadets were dismissed to their quarters, Crothmore watched the human walk away. Ward did not look back. He did not need to. Velk broke the silence. "Do you want me to flag him for early removal?" Crothmore shook his head slowly. "No." He bared his tusks in a grim smile. "Let the trial do its work." Above them, the Academy's display updated automatically, projecting the trial parameters into the hall. Crothmore read them with satisfaction, already imagining the moment the human would finally panic. Because everything panicked eventually. Everything except, perhaps, creatures that had learned long ago that fear was not an enemy to be obeyed, but a signal to be managed. And that thought, unbidden and unwelcome, lingered with him far longer than it should have. The first evaluation trial began, without ceremony. There were no speeches, no warnings beyond those already carved into the Academy's walls. The cadets were herded into the preparation chamber and stripped of personal equipment until each of them carried the same standardized loadout: a light combat suit, a pulse rifle with limited charge, and a wrist-mounted interface that tracked vitals but offered no guidance. Equality at the Black Spire was simply another way to ensure no one could claim excuses. Instructor Crothmore observed from the control tier, arms folded across his massive chest. The simulation architects had designed this trial to attack instinct first and logic second. Panic killed faster than any weapon, and the Academy had learned long ago how to provoke it with precision. The chamber dissolved into a harsh white glare as the trial activated. When vision returned, the cadets found themselves scattered across a fractured urban landscape. Towering ruins leaned at unstable angles, debris choked narrow streets, and the sky burned with a constant, oppressive glow. Warning indicators flared immediately as automated defenses came online. Targets were not marked. Objectives were not explained. Survival was assumed to be self-evident. Several cadets roared and charged forward, weapons blazing. Their confidence lasted seconds. Turret fire shredded cover that looked solid but was deliberately weak. Explosive drones emerged from hidden alcoves, herding targets into kill zones. One by one, vital monitors spiked into the red and then vanished from the display. Crothmore grunted approvingly. The trial was functioning as intended. Elias Ward appeared on the feed moments later, emerging from behind a collapsed transit line. He did not run. He crouched, studied the street ahead, then retreated out of sight. His pulse rate remained elevated but controlled, rising sharply only when necessary and settling quickly afterward. "He's hesitating," Velk said, noting the pause. "No," Crothmore replied. "He's measuring." Ward moved again, this time at a steady jog, weaving through shadowed alleys rather than open ground. He ignored a nearby cadet who was firing wildly at a drone, choosing instead to slip past while the machine was distracted. He did not engage unless forced to, conserving both ammunition and attention. The trial escalated. Auditory assaults flooded the environment, distant screams, structural collapses, warning sirens tuned to trigger stress responses across species lines. The air grew hotter, heavier, forcing exertion to cost more with every step. Cadets began to slow. Some froze entirely, overwhelmed by conflicting stimuli. Ward paused in a narrow corridor as a blast shook the ground behind him. He pressed his back to the wall, closed his eyes briefly, and took 3 measured breaths. When he opened them, his focus sharpened. He adjusted his route, altering direction before the system could predict his movement. "Interesting," Velk murmured. Crothmore said nothing. His eyes followed the human's progress as Ward climbed through debris rather than around it, using elevation to avoid ground-level kill zones. He triggered a turret intentionally, drawing its fire, then doubled back while it recalibrated. The maneuver was inefficient in time, but effective in damage avoided. Elsewhere, the cadet count dropped rapidly. The system introduced its next layer, simulated enemy patrols. Humanoid constructs moved with unpredictable patterns, forcing close-quarters decisions. One cadet attempted to overpower a patrol unit directly, and was neutralized in seconds. Another fled blindly into an ambush. Ward watched a patrol from concealment, timing its route. When it passed beneath a damaged overpass, he dropped debris onto it, disabling its sensors before finishing it with a single shot. He did not linger. He was already moving before the system registered the kill. Crothmore's tusks tightened. He's solving it. Yes, Velk agreed. Not reacting. Solving. Minutes passed. Then more. The trial's internal clock ticked upward, and with it the instructor's confusion. No human had ever reached this phase before. In truth, few cadets of any species did. A warning icon flashed on the control display. Ward had triggered an objective node. Crothmore leaned forward. That's impossible. The nodes were not meant to be discovered. They existed to mislead automated analysis, not participants. And yet the human had found one, likely by noticing patterns in environmental reinforcement rather than following the chaos the trial was designed to create. Ward crouched beside the node, fingers moving quickly across his interface. The system responded, recalibrating the environment in real time. Threat density increased. Escape routes collapsed. The trial pushed back harder, as if offended. Ward smiled faintly. He moved faster now, not because he was panicking but because he had enough information. His earlier caution paid dividends as he predicted ambush points and avoided them entirely. His pulse spiked only once, when a drone detonated closer than anticipated, and even then he adapted, rerouting without hesitation. One by one, the remaining cadet signals disappeared. The control chamber grew quiet. How long has he been active? Velk asked. Crothmore checked the timer.
His jaw tightened.
Longer than any cadet this cycle. And he's not slowing, Velk added. No, Crothmore said, his voice low. He's accelerating. On the display, Ward reached a wide plaza littered with wreckage. At its center stood a structure marked with faint, almost hidden indicators, an end-state construct. No cadet was expected to reach it. Doing so required ignoring the obvious threats and pursuing an objective the trial insisted did not exist. Ward stopped at the edge of the plaza and scanned the area carefully. Crothmore felt an unfamiliar tension coil in his chest. This was the point where instinct usually betrayed them, where even the strongest hesitated or rushed forward and died. Ward stepped out into the open. Weapons locked onto him immediately. Targeting systems adjusted, tracking his movement with lethal precision. Crothmore waited for the inevitable. Ward did not run. He walked, counting steps, adjusting his pace just enough to disrupt firing solutions. He reached the central structure, placed his hand against it, and the plaza vanished in a wash of white light. The trial feed froze. A single line of text replaced it. Objective state. In progress. Crothmore stared at the display, unease hardening into something colder. The trial had not ended. It had been engaged. And for the first time in the Academy's history, it was the system, not the cadet, that was being forced to respond. The system reacted with violence. The moment the objective state shifted, the environment rebuilt itself around Elias Ward, stripping away illusion and replacing it with raw pressure. The plaza reformed into a kill basin, walls rising too high to climb, exits sealing shut as heat and kinetic threat signatures spiked at once. This was the trial's final answer to defiance, overwhelming force applied without nuance. In the control chamber, alarms flared. That configuration isn't meant to be survivable, Velk said sharply. Not even theoretically. Crothmore did not respond. His eyes were fixed on the display, tusks drawn tight against his jaw. He had overseen this trial for decades. He knew its limits.
Or he had thought he did.
Ward stood at the center of the basin, head tilted slightly as if listening. His vitals jumped as the first wave deployed, automated infantry constructs advancing from every direction, aerial units locking in from above. Fire poured into the space he occupied.
Ward moved. Not fast.
Precisely. He stepped into the gaps between firing cycles, timing his motion to the fractional delays in targeting recalibration. He didn't sprint. Sprinting wasted energy and drew predictive fire. Instead, he flowed forward, weapon coming up only when a shot would matter. One round disabled a leg joint. Another collapsed a sensor array. He never fired twice at the same target. He's reading the system, Velk whispered. No, Crothmore said, voice rough. He's forcing it to read him. The basin's temperature climbed. Gravity fluctuated, dragging at Ward's movements, designed to shatter balance and induce panic. His breath came faster now, sweat darkening the fabric of his suit, but his eyes stayed clear. He adjusted his stance, shortened his steps, leaned into the pull instead of fighting it. A heavy unit dropped directly in his path, plating thick enough to shrug off standard fire. Ward didn't engage it. He changed direction by 3 degrees, just enough that its bulk blocked fire from 2 aerial units behind it. Their shots slammed into their own ally, armor buckling under friendly fire the system hadn't anticipated. Crothmore's claws dug into the railing. The timer appeared in the corner of the display, unbidden. Elapsed time, 6:41. That's not possible, Velk said. Even survival averages. Ward vaulted onto a fallen construct, used the elevation to trigger a sensor spike, then dove as countermeasures fired where he had been rather than where he was going. He rolled, came up behind a turret, and tore its power core free with a grunt of effort. The resulting detonation cleared half the basin. The system recalculated. New threats spawned. New vectors converged. The trial escalated again, desperate now, layering complexity on top of force. Ward laughed once, a short, sharp sound that surprised even him. Minutes, Crothmore breathed, horror creeping into his voice. He's doing it in minutes. Ward reached the inner control spire at the basin's heart, a structure never meant to be touched. It was not marked, not guarded in any traditional sense. It existed as an assumption that no cadet would survive long enough, think clearly enough, to approach it. Ward pressed his palm to the interface. The spire resisted, then yielded. Data cascaded across his wrist display as the system attempted to overwhelm him with options, warnings, false choices. He ignored most of it. He wasn't trying to master the trial. He was trying to end it. You designed it to punish instinct, he muttered under his breath. So stop rewarding it. He rerouted power flows, not to shut systems down, but to simplify them. Threat density dropped as redundancies collapsed. The environment lost its layered deception, stripped down to function. The trial, robbed of complexity, could no longer escalate meaningfully. In the control chamber, silence pressed in. The display flickered. Trial status, complete. Elapsed time, 8:12. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the room erupted. That's an error. One instructor snarled. Run diagnostics. They are running, Velk said, stunned. All systems report valid completion. Crothmore straightened slowly, the weight of the moment settling into his bones. He had expected to feel anger. Instead, he felt something colder, heavier. On the display, Ward stood alone in an empty chamber, shoulders rising and falling as he caught his breath. He did not celebrate. He did not pose. He simply waited. The chamber doors opened, and Ward stepped out into the intake hall where the remaining instructors had gathered. He looked smaller than ever among them, exhausted, bruised, but standing. Crothmore descended from the control tier and approached him, each step measured. You completed the first evaluation trial, he said. Yes, instructor. In record time. Ward shrugged faintly. It was efficient. That trial breaks warlords, Crothmore said. It reduces veterans to instinct and fear. Do you know why? Ward met his gaze. Because it assumes fear is the end state. Crothmore felt something in his chest shift. And for humans, he asked. Ward considered the question, then answered simply. Fear is a signal, not a command. The hall was silent again, but this time the silence was different. It was no longer waiting for failure. It was waiting for explanation. Crothmore turned away at last, issuing orders in a voice that carried new weight. Clear the chamber. Suspend standard curriculum review. He paused, glancing back at the human. Cadet Ward, he said. This was only the first trial. Ward nodded, eyes steady despite his exhaustion. Then you should probably update the others. Crothmore bared his tusks, not in a snarl, but in something closer to respect. Yes, he said quietly. We should. Because the Academy had just witnessed the impossible, and whatever came next would not be designed to break a human. It would be designed to understand him. The Academy did not celebrate victories. It analyzed them. Within hours of Elias Ward's completion, the Black Spire's upper tiers filled with instructors and analysts, all male, all veterans of wars that had reshaped star systems. Data streams replayed the trial from dozens of angles, slowing, isolating moments that should not have worked. Yet they had. Every time. Crothmore stood at the center of the chamber, arms clasped behind his back, watching Ward's movements loop across the central display. He no longer saw a fragile body navigating a hostile environment. He saw a pattern, deliberate, adaptable, unsettlingly calm. He did not overpower the system, one instructor said. He dismantled its assumptions. Crothmore inclined his head. Because it was built on ours. Ward waited in a smaller chamber below, seated on a plain bench, forearms resting on his knees. Medics had cleared him quickly. He had refused extended evaluation, citing readiness for further instruction. He did not pace. He did not fidget. His exhaustion was real, but it did not own him. When Crothmore entered, Ward stood immediately. At ease, the instructor said. This is not a reprimand. Ward nodded and sat again. Crothmore studied him in silence. The Academy has trained conquerors, shock commanders, and execution leaders, he said at last. Your performance does not fit our models. Ward looked up. Then your models are incomplete. A lesser cadet would have been punished for that tone. Crothmore only considered it. Explain. You train warriors to act when ordered, Ward said. To endure, to dominate, to survive extremes. Humans train to operate when structure fails. When orders are wrong or absent. When panic is reasonable. Crothmore felt a low, unfamiliar unease. You are saying fear is irrelevant to you. No, Ward replied. I'm saying it's unavoidable. So we teach people what to do while they're afraid. The words settled heavily in the chamber. In the days that followed, the Academy changed, subtly at first. Trial parameters were reviewed. Failure thresholds were adjusted. Warning notices appeared where none had existed before. 1. Etched into the stone beside the first evaluation trials designation, drew particular attention. Completion recorded. Human cadet confirmed. Other cadets watched Ward from a distance as he moved through the halls. None challenged him. Not because he had proven stronger, but because he had demonstrated something harder to confront. He did not need the Academy to validate him. He treated it as a tool. Crothmore observed this with a growing sense of clarity. He summoned Ward again before the next cycle began. You understand, he said, that future trials will adapt to you. Ward nodded. They should. They will be harsher, more complex. They should be, Ward repeated. Crothmore's tusks flexed in what might have been a smile. You do not seek dominance. No, Ward said. I seek completion. The instructor considered that. And if the trials cannot be completed? Ward met his gaze steadily. Then they're not finished being designed. For the first time since the Academy's founding, Crothmore felt something close to anticipation rather than certainty. The human had not shattered the system. He had revealed its limits. As Ward was dismissed, Crothmore remained behind, staring at the updated projections of future trials. They no longer assumed failure as an endpoint. They could not afford to. The Black Spire had been built to break monsters, to grind down creatures who relied on strength, instinct, and rage. It had succeeded for centuries because those traits were easy to provoke and easier to exploit. Humans were different. They did not eliminate fear. They carried it with them, refined it, and learned to function inside it. Where other species sought to silence terror, humans listened to it and chose anyway. Crothmore understood now why so many human conflicts had ended not with annihilation, but with exhaustion. Not because humans were merciful, but because they were relentless in a quieter way. The galaxy had prepared for beasts. It had not prepared for men who treated impossible systems as problems waiting to be solved. As the lights dimmed across the academy and the next cycle's trials armed themselves, Crothmore allowed himself one final thought, heavy with respect and warning alike. The 99% failure rate had never been a challenge to humans. It had been an invitation, and Elias Ward had accepted it.